A tour would not be complete without a fantastic tour director. And today's tour director is no exception. A tour director is like a personal travel concierge who stays with your group from start to finish and shares a world of knowledge, manages all your travel plans, and makes sure your experience is stressless and full of positive experiences, allowing you to make lifelong memories and to have a lot of stressless engagement. They are by far the most important people in the group. And of course, if we're not traveling, our tour directors have no work and haven't had work for almost a year now, many of them. So I will be sure to chat with you and to share how you can send a tip to the tour director if you are so inclined. So I'm so glad that these virtual tours are keeping us all engaged with travel while we are all shut down, what the world has to offer us, and it allows the tour directors to do what she does best, which is share her knowledge. It is with great pleasure today that I am going to bring on our tour director for today, Patty Sommer, who is going to share with us the capitals of Scandinavia. And right now, Patty, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing and then you're going to grab it and you're going to start sharing your presentation.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Let me just, okay. Okay. Is it okay?
No. Yep, you'll want to go into presentation mode and then you'll be ready to go.
Yeah, just if I, okay, good. Hold on. Sorry, guys. First time, as you. Here we are.
Yep.
Should be okay. Okay. Is that okay?
Yes, if you hit, yep, and you're ready to go to Scandinavia.
Okay, so let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being so numerous to this virtual presentation. My name is Patty Sommer. I'm Italian, as you can probably hear from my accent. And I'm in love with Scandinavia. I'm a tour director. I've led hundreds and thousands of tours, I think, because I'm quite old. And I've taken so many people to Scandinavia. It's one of my favorite destinations for many reasons that will come out during the presentation. So why don't we start? If I can do it.
Patty, before you get started, if you could just try to use your outside voice as much as possible so that those in the audience can hear you as well as we can.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Your outside voice will always be appreciated.
Yeah, is that okay now?
Yep, keep on going.
Okay, sorry. Well, hold on. You see, glitches. I'm sorry. Okay, I wanted to start with our presentation. Mara, sorry, I have a technical problem.
Okay, feel free to go back to the beginning if you need to.
There you go.
Perfectly fine. Just go back to the first slide and start over.
Yes. Okay. Capitals of Scandinavia. Apologies, guys. Sorry. So the first question that might arise is, what is Scandinavia? It's a broad concept. Scandinavia is historically Scandia, part of Northern Europe. Generally, it consists in the two countries of the Scandinavian peninsula, which are Norway and Sweden, and we're going to talk about them, with the addition of Denmark. Some authorities argue for the inclusion of Finland on geologic and economic grounds, and of Iceland and the Faroe Islands on the grounds that their inhabitants speak North Germanic or Scandinavian languages related to those of Norway and Sweden. So in the three countries we're gonna visit tonight virtually, they speak different languages, but with the same origin, which is Nordic German. They understand each other, even if they speak their own language. Where is Scandinavia? Well, it's a question we hear often, and it's harder to answer than one might think. What constitutes a Scandinavian country changes depending on the context and on who you ask. If you're talking about geography, culture, language, the answer may be different. When you throw the word Nordic, you might have heard the word Nordic just to be more general into the mix. Things get even less clear as you tackle Nordic versus Scandinavian in different contexts. When do you use Nordic and when do you use Scandinavian then? Some people seem to use them interchangeably, while others assign specific meanings to each word. So the origin of the word Scandinavia arose in the early 18th century as a result of Danish and Swedish university championing the shared history, mythology, arts, and culture of Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. The base movement was set in Scania, which is the southern part of Sweden. It's a province. It's the southern most province of Sweden. And this gave rise to the term Scandinavia. Remember, we won't cover the whole history of Scandinavia, of course, tonight, but remember that until 1814, Denmark and Norway were actually united in one kingdom. And after that time, Norway and Denmark were actually united under one kingdom. After that time, Norway and Sweden were under one kingdom until Norway's independence in 1905. So we understand that Norway has been independent for not a long time. It's quite a young land of independence, let's say. Scania and Scandinavia are considered to have the same etymology. That's why we have all this confusion and using both words. So to sum it all up, to cut the story short, all we can say is that geographically, there are three Scandinavian countries, the ones we are going to visit tonight, which are Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Culturally, there are 6 Scandinavian countries, which are Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, plus Iceland, which is on the left-hand side. You can't really see, you can see just a tiny bit of the island, and Finland, and the Faroe Islands, which are the islands up on top, the Shetland Islands. So now we're going to start our tour of the Scandinavian capitals as promised by the title. And we're gonna meet Oslo, the capital of Norway, Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark, and Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden. So we'll start our journey together from Oslo, the capital of Norway. The first question that all my travelers ask me when they land in Norway is, will we be able to see the Northern Lights? Because, of course, as you can see from the picture here, it's not one of the best ones, is something breathtaking. Well, my answer usually is, if you really want to see them, well, head north. Because yes, if you want to see the Northern Lights, Norway is a good place to visit. But if you go further north, it will be much better. If you want to have a good chance of seeing the Northern Lights, you'll want to go at least You can see it here. As far as Bodo, can you see the first flashing magnifying lens? And adding all the way up to Tromsø or Alta would give you even better chances. Alta is on top over there. So you have to go quite far north. And also be aware that the Arctic Circle is quite a long journey from Oslo or Bergen. Bergen is another city that we'll see just a tiny bit later on, because I couldn't exclude it from this presentation because it's one of my favorite cities in Norway. Let's say that Bodo is like 16 plus hour drive from Oslo and a 19 hours ride. Train ride, sorry. So if you're on a tight schedule and you have your heart set on seeing the aurora borealis, as we call it, well, it might be best to fly. Okay, we won't see it. We won't go on this virtual tour because it's concentrated, it's focused on the capitals. But I just wanted to give you some hints. And then the lights themselves are unpredictable. So the biggest challenge you'll face when trying to see them is probably the weather. Ideally, you want to have time to either wait out the bad weather or get away from it. I would try at least to spend 4 days up north just to expand the chances to see the Northern Lights. Most people know that they shouldn't plan their Northern Lights trip, and I'm talking just about the Northern Lights trip, for the middle of summer when the sun never sets. It wouldn't make any sense. But believe it or not, the best time to see the Northern Lights in Norway is not necessarily the darkest time of the year. So let's clarify. The weather in November, December, and January can be brutal. So a lot of people say that the best months, the best period when you can see the Northern Lights is September, October, or February and March, where the climate, the weather is a bit better. That's just a suggestion, a personal suggestion, but I've tried many times, okay? My first times in Scandinavia was just chasing these Northern Lights and not being able to see them. But then I understood, I studied, I did my research, and finally I made it. The weather in Norway, as I said, is always unpredictable. So you might find yourself in the advised months and not having the chance to see them. It's just like a surprise. So, and moreover, remember that with the way the aurora oval is positioned, generally you'll have the highest chance of seeing the Northern Lights at night, okay? I usually always see them after 7 p.m. or even later. So visiting Norway in December when it's dark all day won't necessarily increase the chances to see them. And it's not that likely you'll see the Northern Lights at 3 in the afternoon anyway. So remember, September, October, February, and March to avoid the brutal climate and weather. And after 7 p.m., I would say also after 9, okay? Traveling across, after this introduction, traveling across Norway, if you're thinking to move from Oslo and going up north, will show you the best of Norway. And you will see, for example, the fjords, which are on the west coast of the country. And the most famous thing of this country. And you can see the cities on the coast, like Bergen. I told you before, I would have talked a tiny bit about Bergen. And there you go. This is the picture, a picture of Bergen, showing the Bryggen, the headquarters of the Hanseatic League, which was a trade confederation. And from the mid 1300s to mid 1700s. And these wooden houses, you see, they're red, white, yellow, mustard wooden houses. And they're leaning, so they're beautiful. Today are a UNESCO site and are unmissable, I would say. Okay, but okay, it's not just that. You can see wonderful. Well, this is one part of Brygge and at the back of the houses. But what you'll see is absolutely stunning, wonderful views. This picture was taken from the train. I was traveling with a group towards Bergen, and the scenery is just like jaw-dropping. And I love this picture because it reminds me of that beautiful trip with a group of from Iowa who had Norwegian ancestors and enjoyed visiting the land of their grandfathers or great-grandfathers. Then you can also see wonderful lakes, for example, and the famous ancient wooden churches. There are a few left, and they are really worth a visit. So you will leave the proper Nordic atmosphere, where silence and nature will be the only companions for your travel companions. And believe me, it's like something that takes you away from reality. It's almost surreal if you're used to live in a big city or in crowded areas. So you go away from the crowds and into the wild, as I say. Look at this waterfall, which is beautiful. It's another thing that you can experience traveling up north. But if you are short of time and you want just a taste of the country, which is absolutely acceptable, Oslo won't leave you disappointed. And that's why I want to start exploring it together. I imagine this virtual tour as a walk-in tour. We'll use also public transports. Move from one country to the other. Okay, let me start from this picture. I apologize because the quality of the picture is horrible, unfortunately, but this is the sign, the first sign I've seen when I first arrived at Oslo airport. A huge wall covered by Norwegian lichen, inviting the visitors to start the journey in this magic land. And it is really magic. So, okay, let's go now to see a bit more of Oslo. Oslo, the capital of Norway. Can you see it down south? It's one of the world's largest capitals in terms of area, but only the 20% of this landmass has been developed. The remainder consists in parks, and you can see it, wonderful, just a few minutes away outside Norway, outside Oslo, I'm sorry. And you have protected forests and hills and hundreds of lakes, so you will be spoiled for choice. The position of Oslo, Oslo is situated on the Oslo fjord, and which is not so narrow as the fjords on the west part of the country, on the west coast of the country. But with its many islands and the easy access from the city center, they will give you this kind of panorama, this kind of view. This is from the city center. So you're not too far from the fjord, and you can really have a taste of it. These are the small cottages and houses in the fjord that you mainly see if you take a boat ride, for example, or if you, as we will do later, will catch the ferry to go to Copenhagen. Okay. Look how beautiful. The light is fantastic. These pictures were taken in July. So it was daylight most of the day, and the weather was gorgeous. There you go, other pictures. This was taken instead in October, as you can see from the colors of autumn. And another great moment to see the beauty of this country. This is one of the boats that takes you around the Oslo fjord and gives you a better idea on what a fjord consists of, for example. So not only going on a ship or on a ferry, but the center is a joy to explore on foot, and that's what we're going to do tonight. Thanks to the numerous pathways and trails connecting its public spaces, as well as its many pedestrian and friendly areas, studded by tiny cafes and restaurants where Norwegians enjoy to spend their time when they're not exercising or just exercising in the woods, because they love the open air, love nature, and when they have the chance, they go out of the city and they immerse themselves in nature, okay, in the woods. So I was talking about this walk we're going to do together. And we will start the city main street, which is Karl Johans Gate. This is an avenue, a quite long avenue that connects let's say it starts from the central station. You can see the picture on the left. And the first thing you'll see is the monument, the steel hammer smashing the swastika symbol. A monument to Oswald Gruppen. Oswald Gruppen, what was it? It was a group of resistance that made a lot of efforts, which are quite very appreciated nowadays still, during World War II. This monument was unveiled on the 1st May of 2015. And let me just link this monument to a bit of history of Norway situation during World War II. With the outbreak of hostilities in 1939, Norway declared itself neutral. But in April the 9th of 1940, the German troops invaded the country and quickly occupied Oslo, Bergen, Trondheim, and Narvik. So they went far up until 1945. Okay, this is just a little hint on recent history. So we were talking about Karl Johans Gate, the wide avenue that passes many of Oslo tourist attractions, such as the Central Gardens. You have some examples here. You can see the famous peacock fountain right in the middle that you'll find in the garden. And well, I couldn't resist. I had to put this slide, which is coming up now, which are the public toilets, which are quite funny. They look quite funny, and they're free of charge. They get sanitized, they self-sanitize every time you use them. So I would say a very civilized city where you can find, you know that in Europe it's quite difficult to find public toilets. Well, Oslo is not one of them, okay? Then we'll meet the Oslo National Theatre, inaugurated in 1899. And you might have heard of one of the most famous playwrights called Erik Ibsen, which is a national hero because he is the playwright for excellence in Norway and Oslo, of course. It used to hang around this Karl Johans Gate. There's still a cafe where he would sip coffee and talk to the intellectuals and write his plays. Then We'll pass by the Oslo Old University. This is just the Old University, the magnificent cutting-edge architecture buildings, a bit far out, but not too far from the city. So this is another building where we're gonna see walking, okay? And then here we are, the oldest church in Oslo, also Domkirke, okay, which dates back to 1694. Let me show you the internal part. The internal part of this church. It's beautiful and austere at the same time, I would say. And talking about churches, let's talk about religion just a bit. Norway is a Protestant country. Over the 70% of the population belong to the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Norway. To be honest, as far as I know we have a few Norwegians following us, so maybe they will confirm later. But they don't go to church much. I would say is a full-time thing in their lives, which is the christening, the confirmation, their wedding, and their funeral. These are the 4 times when they visit a church, okay? And at the end of this long avenue, you will find the Royal Palace. Here we go. These colors are quite real. It's yellow. You can see it from far away. The perspective towards the Royal Palace is beautiful. So it's located high up on the northwest of end of Karl Johan's Gate. And it was built in 1825. And it dominates the cityscape. It's quite impressive. It's got 173 rooms, and it's open to the public, okay? It's open for guided tours during the summer only, not in the winter. There are English language guides 4 times a day, so you can access it and discover more. The tours usually include the main rooms because part of the palace is dedicated to the royals. I'll tell you later a bit more. So you will see the cabinet parlor, the cloakroom, the white parlor, the mirror hall, the great hall, the banquet hall, and other significant rooms in the palace. And then you are free to wander in the grounds and garden or watch the regular changing of the guard all year round. It happens, rain or shine, winter and summer. But yeah, okay, we got the royal palace. What about the royal family? Here we are. The royal family, they have their offices here because they live in different residences and palaces scattered in the outskirts of Oslo, usually surrounded by green scenery and nature. And the Norwegian royal family is surprisingly like any other family in Norway. Its members are extremely down to earth, and if you hang out in the right area of Oslo, you might bump into the Crown Prince Haakon jogging or shopping, for example. So they live like anybody else. And Oslo is quite small, I would say, as a city. So it's quite, the chances to meet him are quite high, okay? The Norwegian monarch, there you go, you have the royal family. On the right-hand side, we'll see King Harald V with his wife, Queen Sonja, and Crown Prince Haakon Magnus, which will be following after his father's death. He'll be the next queen, and his sister, the Crown Princess Mette-Marit. Okay. So the Norwegian monarch is the monarchical head of state of Norway, which is a constitutional and hereditary monarchy with a parliamentary system. So the king hasn't got as much power as he used to have. So the present monarch, the King Harald V, was reigned since the 7th January, I don't want to be mistaken with the date, but it was January 1991, succeeded his father, Olaf V, a king that everybody loved quite a lot. Another funny and interesting element is that King Harald and Queen Elizabeth II, the current monarch of Britain, are second cousins because King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra of the United Kingdom are the great grandparents of both the Norwegian and the British monarch. So this is it for the monarch, royal family in Norway. If we keep walking, remember we're doing a walking tour, we go just south of the palace and we'll meet the Norwegian Nobel Institute, where the Nobel Peace Prize is presented. Like much else surrounding the Nobel Prizes, the reasons why Alfred Nobel picked the Norwegian Parliament to award a Peace Prize is still a mystery. It's unclear. It has been speculated that he might have wanted to distribute the prizes between Sweden and Norway, two countries that at the time when the prize was instituted were still a union. So Nobel also admired the Norwegian poet Bjørnstjerne Bjørnson and his work, and especially he was a peace activist. This author was activist. So that's one of the reasons why probably the Peace Nobel Award is given here in Oslo. Okay. According to other theories, Nobel was impressed by the role of the Norwegian Parliament and that the Norwegian Parliament played in conflict resolutions towards the end of the 19th century. So probably Nobel must have perceived Norway as a more peaceful country than Sweden. But we'll go in depth into Nobel and the prizes and stuff as we get along with the presentation. Let me show you a picture of the main hall of the town hall where the award is given. We'll visit the town hall later because it is worth a visit. And I just wanted to show you this picture just to see if you can find yourselves there. That year, I don't think I was invited. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm being silly. Okay, so talking about the town hall, I was talking about the town hall of Oslo, which is one of my favorite buildings. Now you'll see the picture and you'll be a bit surprised. Let's see. There you go. This is the town hall, a massive building covered with bricks. It's enormous. It's called Rådhuset, okay, which means town hall. And it's a great landmark in Oslo. The Rådhus was completed during the 1930s when the Labour Party ruled Norway. The decorative tile during freezing portraying different occupations and the 6 bayside bronze statues that we will see later. Let me see if I can show you better here. Our statues of idealized laborers testify that the architects and artists desire to portray the noble working class toiling together for the good of society, of course, and most of all, for the good of the country. This imposing square building, built on concrete, faced with red bricks, was designed by the architects Arnstein Arnberg and Magnus Poulsen, and has 2 towers, as you can see right in front of you. One of them is adorned with a huge clock face, One of the two towers houses 38 bells that can be heard chiming throughout the harbor area. And it's a very nice feeling to be there when they struck the hour. So you might be surprised. Yeah, it's weird. It's made of bricks, nothing special, nothing, no luxury or anything. But believe me that its bland and simple facade is decorated, but it's still stern. It's still quite bare, I would say. And it is completely the opposite of what we'll see when we'll go inside. And off we go. This is at the entrance. This is a symbol of Old Oslo that you'll find on the floor entering the town hall. And it represents Old Oslo. Okay, you can see Akershus fortress and many symbols of the sea, for example, many symbols of Oslo. But what the interior is more important. Reasons why, I just want to keep the suspense a bit. The reasons why we go to this place, we go visit the town hall. First, it's free of charge. You can enter and visit it on your own. You can take pictures. If you want, there are guided visits, but you can do it on your own if you like. There are public toilets again in there, so you can, and there's a bar and a little shop, a souvenir shop, which sells quite interesting stuff about Oslo. When you enter, what you'll see, it's a rich fresco, and you can see it here, created by Erik Sorensen, Peter Krogh, and maybe you will know this artist I'm about to mention, Edvard Munch. We'll talk about Edvard Munch later when we'll see the Munch Museum, okay? So the artwork combines folk art with bright colors and impressionistic and cubist techniques of Matisse, Cézanne, and Picasso in a stylistic blend called socialist realism, which idealizes the working class. Here is the main hall seen from another point of view. And it's beautiful, of course. Pictures, especially the pictures I've loaded, they will never do justice to the real place, but believe me, it is really worth a visit. The Nobel Peace Prize award ceremony is held here in the main hall each year in December the 10th, which is the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. Let me show you some of the frescoes because to me they're just amazing. I forgot to tell you something. Just in case you were thinking to get married in the town hall, as you can see from this picture, there's a bride right in the middle. You can do it, and you'll be, in one of the most beautiful settings to celebrate your wedding in Norway or in Oslo, I'd say. This is part of the main hall. And these are the rooms with a lot of frescoes and ceilings decorated. Let me show you a bit more. I'm sure that you will appreciate as much as I do. This is a representation that is very symbolic. The lady with a crown on his head is Norway, followed by the people, by the workers, and by the Norwegian flag. So it's really, there's a lot of symbolism in this kind of art. Other frescoes in other rooms, very colorful. Can't you see? Can you notice the contrast with the outside dark red brick walls and this interior, which is absolutely stunning. Here are more pictures, more details, okay? And yes, this room here represents all the products that make Norway great and rich. Okay. This instead is a view from the town hall to the Oslo fjord. So from the window, you can see this. This is the view you have. And if you exit this way, you'll be attracted from by the seafront for sure. And you will bump into the next gem, which is Akerbrygge. What's Akerbrygge? It's an area in the and it's the heart and soul of the city. It's bustling with vibrant day and night. It's stunning architecture, that magnificent blend of old and new that perfectly complements Norway's stunning natural beauty. And it's everywhere on display. Everywhere you go, you can see the combination of old and new, keeping the natural materials like bricks and wood, which are the main materials used to build in Norway. Um, it is estimated that 12 million people visit annually this area, and they're attracted by the seafront boardwalk, for example, the fine shopping you can do inside this Akerbrygge is not a shopping mall, okay? It's more a leisure center that includes different aspects of life. You'll find great restaurants and cozy cafes with their snug rugs and fireplaces, because Norwegians, they like to sit outside with a comfortable, fluffy rug and a fireplace, sipping their coffee. While visiting, Akerbrygge is not just shopping, restaurants, and cafes. While visiting, make sure that to pop into the newly opened Astrup Fearnley Museum of Modern Art. The museum consists of two buildings. One is has got its own collection that shows works by Andy Warhol, Damien Hirst, and Jeff Koons, so all modern and contemporary art, while the other building is used for rotating exhibitions. But let's keep walking, okay? We don't have time to stop, we've just started. So walking from Akerbrygge, you will meet a lot of art installations. You see, there's everything everywhere connected to art, which gives the city the aspect of an open-air museum, open-air gallery. You will hear me saying that many times. It's because the whole city is just a gem itself. And despite being a really expensive destination, you can do a lot of things for free. You can admire and enter a lot of buildings for free. So that is, I think, a pro of this city, that it gives everybody the chance to visit the highlights. So you can, of course, walk along the waterfront, and in around 15 minutes walk, you will find yourself in front of one of the most beautiful buildings, contemporary buildings of the city, which is the Oslo Opera House. It's home to the Norwegian National Opera and Ballet, as well as the National Opera Theatre. This 1,364-seat Oslo Opera House seems to almost want to slip in the city's harbor. And to be honest, if you arrive to Oslo by boat from the fjord, you will see it from a different perspective, and it will look like an iceberg because it's all blinding white. This picture was taken by night, at night, so you might not really understand what I mean, but the structure Well, the effect of sleeping in the city's harbor is exaggerated by its angled exterior surfaces. And moreover, it's clad in Italian marble of Carrara and white granite. So this is really, really evident from far away. You can see it. The Opera House is the largest cultural building constructed in Norway since the 14th century. And in addition to many performances that are always on display, are always on, visitors can also participate in a variety of interesting public programs and behind the scene tours, because you can take guided tours inside with internal professional guides. And then you can enjoy the views from a stroll on the building's roof. Can you see on top there are people? Well, one of the most beautiful experiences you can have is to walk all around, exploring all the corners and different areas of the opera house from the outside. It's one of my favorite spots to relax when I have a couple of minutes of free time. And I can watch the city from a privileged and surreal point of view. And if it's sunny, believe me, you can get a good suntan because, yeah, you know, the white reflects the sun rays and you can get tanned. Well, it happens just like a couple of months a year. Now you'll see, I want to show you, because the outside is stunning, but the inside is even better. Let me show you. I'm sorry. These are the pictures of the interior that I took, and where you can see at once the materials used to realize such beauty. Look, there's glass, there's timber, and the metal and the marble make the building something special. Moreover, these big windows, these big parts of glass surrounding the building allow daylight to come in. You'll notice that all the houses, or the majority of the buildings, especially the contemporary ones, have huge, massive windows, because as you know, Norway, gets a couple of months, 3 months from May to end of July, I would say, of daylight all day round. But then the darkness arrives, and in the winter, they get 2-3 hours of daylight per day, and it's quite gloomy. So, you know, they want to catch as much light as they can, sorry. Okay, exiting the opera house, you'll find yourself, you'll be surprised by a very weird project, which is the Björvika barcode. And it's called the Barcode Project, which sounds like a title for a horror film, to be honest. It consists of 12 narrow high-rise buildings of different heights and widths. Now, at the moment of the picture, I think I counted just 11 buildings. You can see the last one on the right-hand side. I was still in constructions. I'm pretty sure that it's being finished now, okay? The buildings are built with some space in between. Let me see if I can give you the right idea, okay? There's a space between one building and the other. They're not next to each other. So they jointly resemble a barcode. That's why they're called barcode projects. The barcode houses leading national and international businesses, and 10,000 people work here on a daily basis. The buildings also contain 400 apartments, quite expensive, I must say, and a daycare center. And on street level, you'll find a variety of restaurants and shops and cafes and galleries. So there's everything for everyone. The barcode architecture concept was developed by the Norwegian firm Dark and Art ALAB, in collaboration with the Dutch agency MVRDV. The barcode concept is designed as a geometric system that stands out architecturally, as you can see. The concept incorporates values such as openness to the fjord, because it just faces the fjord, and admittance of light and airiness, for the same reason I mentioned before. They want to catch as much light as they can. Based on the barcode concept, the 12 buildings are designed by different architects, and you might, see the different styles. Besides the overall shape, the buildings are very different. Each building has its own distinctive character and enjoyable architectonic details and quirks make. It is definitely an architectural experience quite out of the ordinary, and it gives you plenty of photo opportunities if you are into architecture, because it's something quite special, quite new for the city. I remember the first time I went to Oslo, it was like 1996, last century. Sorry, I told you I'm old. And Oslo wasn't that modern and that cutting edge. So now it's changing, okay? But it's still fascinating. So now we are talking about architecture, we're talking about the fjords, we're talking about a lot of stuff, but I would continue walking, going towards the center, because Oslo offers a wide range of museums. And one of the most famous is the Oslo National Museum. That includes the National Gallery and the National Museum of Architecture, and collections of contemporary art and design. Oslo's National Gallery houses the country's largest art collection, featuring the works of different famous Norwegian artists. But I'm sure that you know this one. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna show you in a second. It's Edvard Munch and his most famous screen, okay? In an advertisement, magazine, when you talk about 20th century, for sure, the Scream is one of the most famous ones. Okay. They're building the new National Museum, which will open in 2022 and will eventually house collections from the current closed museums I was talking about, and the contemporary art and the Museum of Decorative Arts and Design, and the National Gallery collections. To top it all up, if you haven't got enough of museums, we have the Munch Museum, which is dedicated. Let me show you. The Munch Museum, this is the old Munch Museum, is dedicated to the life and work of Norway's greatest painter, Edvard Munch, born in 1863 and died in 1944. The Munch Museum is packed with a vast collection of paintings, graphic art, drawings, watercolors, and sculptures from the artist's life. It contains more than 28,000 works. In addition to his personal effects and tools, you have to think that there's even his private library inside the museum. So the museum also puts on special exhibits devoted to particular aspects of Munch's work through film screenings, concerts, guided tours, and lectures. There's everything about Munch. It's a really exhaustive gallery, but it has become a bit too small. That's why we have the new Munch Museum, again, contemporary, cutting edge architecture. And this will open, I guess, by the end of the year. I think that the pandemic has slowed down quite a bit, all the works around the world. So I guess it was supposed to open at the end of 2020, but I think that the opening has been postponed to 2021. All right, but now let's go back to history and historical buildings. If you want to see something special, well, you can't miss an icon of Oslo, which is Akershus Fortress. It rises above the Oslo fjord on the promontory of Akernes. And it was built by Akon V at the end of the 13th century. Well, to visit this fortress, you must include in your stay in Oslo an extra day, I would say, because it's huge and it's full of amazing corners and different aspects and rooms and quaint, cozy corners. You have to take time on the grounds and ramparts first outside with the wonderful harbor views. Before exploring the quaint chapel that I'm going to show you now, the quaint chapel where there is the tomb of Haakon the Seventh, another famous king of Norway. And then you have to see the remains of the original medieval castle. And also located in the grounds is the Museum of the Norwegian Resistance. So you have to be prepared to spend a few hours here, and you will learn about the German occupation between 1940 and 1945. It's really informative and interesting because you have a better idea on how was to be a country occupied by German troops. Okay, if you have any energy left after this long excursion inside the fortress, head over to the Norwegian Armed Forces Museum, which is in the old arsenal, and it displays weapons and exhibits illustrating the history of the Norwegian forces and the defense of Norway during the centuries. This is what you see in a fortress. If this is your cup of tea, you will have anything you want to learn better about defense, wars, and all that stuff. Okay, so enough concrete and enough city center. Why don't we go to relax to a park? Are you coming with me? Hold on. I'm taking you to Frogner Park. It might be difficult to relax here because it's one of the most interesting open space areas in an art galleries, open air again, galleries you've ever seen. We are about to enter the iconic Vigeland Sculpture Park, which sits inside Oslo's famous Frogner Park. The name of the whole park is Frogner Park. The part we're going to visit together is the Vigeland Sculpture Park. It's open all year round, and it's unique. This unique sculpture park is Gustav Vigeland's life work and contains 650 of his dynamic sculptures in bronze, granite, and wrought iron. It was started in 1920, at the beginning of the 1920s, and it was completed in 1943, unfortunately, after Vigeland's death. Gustav Vigeland, anyway, before his death, donated all his works to the city of Oslo, which in return gave him the park, the chance to display his statues here, and the studio where he could live and work, of course. What are these statues about? The majority of the sculptures are in 5 themed groups along a 853 meter long axis. The oldest is the fountain group, but first of all, walking towards the fountain group, I'll show you different statues, and you can understand that the theme is human beings, human nature. Okay, from childhood to adulthood to the consumption towards the end of a human's life. The figures are portrayed all naked because Vigeland wanted to make their statues timeless. So you're not influenced by, I don't know, the style of the time, clothes or hats or shoes. They're all naked and all really natural photos. And believe me, it's an experience to walk along this park, because you'll see wonderful statues, and you will be surprised that from these quite cold materials like granite, like iron, like marble, he could take out so many meaningful images. And so I don't know, I think it's really it's a travel in a trip, a journey in human life. And I think that everybody should see this park, even because you don't need to stop at every single statue, even if you feel the need at some point, because they're all different. All statues are different. Okay. So I was saying that we are walking along the park, and you see, for example, childhood on the left, and on the right hand side, the elderly and last stages of life. But where I wanted to take you is here, at the fountain, where there is the cycle of life. And you see that in this circle of human people, we have women, we have men, we have children, and they are the symbol of eternity. Beyond the cycle of life, you can see the 16 meters high monolith, and there you go, which was created from one single granite block. It took 14 years to realize it, and there are 121 intertwined human bodies. This monolith, because of the tension towards the sky, represents human tension to spiritual and divine. Okay, so it's really interesting. The tourists, the visitors, will want to spend time exploring the statues, but also to explore the rest of Frogner Park, where there are ample wide green spaces for picnics, recreational facilities. There are public toilets, there are some cafes, there's an enormous rose garden. If you happen to be there towards the end of May, you will enjoy it fully. And there is the nation's largest playground, okay? Also, the locals go here to train, to run, to do exercise. So it's a very populated park, but it's huge, so you won't feel any kind of claustrophobic feeling, okay? You can also find the Oslo City Museum and the Vigeland Museum, which is his former studio, as I told you before, and it's right outside, just outside the park. But now it's time probably to leave the city center, because no trip to Norway would be complete without visiting at least one of the many museums and exhibits dedicated to the country's Viking past. One of the best of these museums is the Viking Ships Museum. This is a picture that I took of one of the best preserved ship's vessel. Now I'm going to show you better. There are three historic 9th century vessels. The best preserved is the Oseberg ship, which is 21 meters long. And it's the largest surviving pre-Christian artifact in Scandinavia. This impressively decorated vessel, I really hope you can see the decorations, was built around AD 800 and was used for the burial of a chieftain's wife and two other women. They were buried with a large selections of items, including furniture, clothing, and personal items. Okay, they found these ships right underground in some farms around Norway, which is just amazing. Okay, the archaeologists found them hundreds of years later. The other two vessels are the Thun ship, which is less well preserved, and also the Gokstad ship, which is a seagoing vessel designed for use under sail or with oars. And then the museum offers, and I haven't seen the new version because it opened up in 2020 and I stopped traveling and touring at the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic. So I don't know how the new museum looks like now, but they intended to enlarge it, make it bigger. Because the museum is also home to several additional exhibits and Viking life on the sea. Okay, we talked about the ships, we talked about the way they buried their own people, but who were the Vikings? We need to find out, we need to explain a bit more who the Vikings were. So the Vikings were the seafaring Norse people from southern Scandinavia, mainly Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And from the late 8th century to the late 11th century, raided, pirated, traded, and settled throughout parts of Europe and explored westward towards you guys living in North America, to Iceland, Greenland, and Finland. I'm sure that most of you have binge-watched TV series and films about these legendary people, but I'd like to make something clear. Okay, let me show you something. Okay, can you see this image? And I wrote Vikings, question mark, question mark. Well, Vikings were, forget this image of Vikings. Forget almost every Viking costume you've seen so far. Yes, the pugnacious Scandinavians probably sported headgear when they marched into battle, but there's no reason to believe it was festooned with horns. These are even a bit too much on the pictures, but I wanted to be clear with my message. In depictions dating from the Viking Age, between the 8th and 11th century, warriors appear either bareheaded or, let me show you, like this, okay, clad in simple helmets likely made either of iron or leather. And despite years of searching, archaeologists have yet to uncover a Viking era helmet embellished with horns. So they didn't exist. In fact, only one complete helmet was found, was discovered, and it can be called definitely Viking. In 1943, in a Gjermundu farm in Norway, and it's a 10th century artifact that has a rounded iron cup, a guard around the eyes and the nose, and no horns to speak of. So the popular image of the strapping Viking in a horned helmet dates back to the 1800s, so it's quite recent. When Scandinavian artists like Sweden's Gustav Malmström included the headgear in their portrayals of the raiders. When Wagner staged his Der Ring der Nibelungen, the opera cycle in the 1870s, the costume designer was really creative, and his name is Carl Emil Döbler, and he created horned helmets for the Viking characters, and an enduring stereotype was born. Malmström, Döbler, and others may have been inspired by the 19th century discoveries of ancient horned helmets that later turned out to predate the Vikings. They may also have taken a cue from ancient Greek and Roman chroniclers who describe Northern Europeans wearing helmets adorned with all manners of ornaments, including horns, wings, or antlers. But not only this headgear fall out of fashion at least a century before the Vikings appeared, it was likely only done for ceremonial purposes by Norse and Germanic priests. After all, let's think about it. Horns' practicality in actual combat are dubious at best. So, sure, they could help intimidate enemies and even poke out a few eyes, probably, but they would have been even more likely to get entangled in a tree branch or embedded in a shield, so they weren't really practical. All right, so I don't know if I destroyed a myth, but this is the real truth about the Viking helmets. Okay, so after all this blah, 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 talking and walking and exploring and trying to remembering everything I told you, let's talk about something lighter, which is Norwegian cuisine. What does Norwegian cuisine consist of? Well, not only fish, as you can see from my slide, even if my first slide is about smoked salmon. Because it's among the best of its kind in the world. Norwegian smoked salmon plays leagues above the generic Lux found in cafes elsewhere. The delicious fish matures at a slow rate, giving it a distinct, deep flavor. I tried different salmons from different parts of the world, and I must admit that the Norwegian one is tastier, and the flavor is more interesting, I would say, more memorable. So you can savor this pink meat by itself, raw or cooked or smoked, and it's more popular to have it accompanied by brown bread, rye bread, generously spread with butter. Okay, now let's have a look at something more about food. And here you have a collection of different foods. The first one on the top left is the classic meatballs. You will hear me talking quite a lot about meatballs during this presentation because they're a popular dish all over the Scandinavian countries. So the kjøttkaker or kjøttboller percolates through a number of Scandinavian culture, not just the Swedish homeware stores. You know what I'm talking about. You know, the meatballs from IKEA that you buy from IKEA. Well, it's not just a Swedish thing, okay? As I was saying, they're popular in Norway, in Denmark, and in Sweden. Usually they swim in brown gravy and they're coupled with potatoes and cabbage. And they hit all the check marks of a well-balanced diet. It's a traditional meal. Okay, now, yeah, you have also the fried ones on the right-hand side. Now let's talk about the bottom left picture that I know is a bit shocking. And the name of this plate, which is a delicacy, it's a specialty, a Norwegian specialty, is smala. Okay, so this is not for the faint of the heart. Sometimes say it's barbaric, others say it's gourmet. The smalahov, or sheep's head, is used to represent a lower class dish, but now it sits on tables across Norway during the festive holiday season. Professional prepares smalahov by first removing the brain and the ears. They sear it on all sides, and they season it generously with salt before they air dry it. You have to fight for the best part. That's what the Norwegian families do, or the sheep's cheek, because you have to taste the best cut. So in case you come to Norway, make sure you give it a go. You might be surprised. It might be good. And then what's the curious thing on the right-hand side, on the bottom right-hand side? That's the brunost, a secret ingredient to stew, or simply enjoyed as a slice of bread, or with a slice of bread, sorry. The brunost provides a sweet and tangy bite. It's courtesy of whey, a byproduct of cheese. Whey technically makes brunost a separate entity. But because cheesemakers produce it and consumers enjoy it like as if it was a fine brie, for example, many regard it as a part of cheese family. And it's really common to find it on Norwegian tables for breakfast or at any time of the day during all the main meals. Now, let's have a look at something that you might be interested in to buy and bring home. I want to start from the bottom because it's the most curious one. And don't mistake this tube of caviar for your spearmint toothpaste. Be careful. Salted cod roe mixed with sugar and a variety of other ingredients squished in the enclosure of a plastic tube involves itself in breakfast foods throughout Scandinavia. You have just to zigzag it to spread it across open-faced sandwiches or dollop it on boiled eggs. And it makes the meal more interesting and for sure unusual. Another thing that you might want to buy or taste once you're here in Oslo is the Freia chocolate, which is an institution in Norway. It's delicious, and you can find it at the supermarket or at the special chocolate shops. Freia is an institution. There are signs everywhere of Freia chocolate in Oslo. Then, well, of course, you should buy a Norwegian sweater. They're really warm and they're perfect for cold winters. And can you see on the right bottom, on the bottom right, you have the cheese slicer, which is a Norwegian invention, and it's used to slice the brunost I was talking about earlier on. If you don't have space or you're tight with money or you're traveling on a budget, you don't want to spend much, this is a kind of souvenir that you can buy at home. These are the famous trolls, okay? And the trolls, I have to tell you something about Norwegians and trolls. So no Norwegian believes in trolls, but every Norwegian knows that they exist, okay? This is due to a kind of cultural brainwashing started during the Norwegian romantic nationalism and continued today by parents and by kindergarten assistants. The trolls live in woods, under bridges, and in tourist shops. You'll find plenty everywhere. They are said to be strong but stupid, very small, and friendly. There is one who looks after animals, for example, one that gives presents to the kids on Christmas Eve. Each troll has a task and a meaning, okay, in their existence. And the funny thing, and you will hear it if you get to know some Norwegian, is that if something goes missing in your house, a nisse is a name for a troll, is usually to blame for. Okay, so if something that's missing, it's for sure. Blame it on the troll, blame it on the nisse. Okay, so now I'd like to continue with our trip. And I would like to use a different way of moving. I don't want to fly. We can't walk because we're going to Copenhagen, to Denmark. So my idea was to catch this ferry, which usually leaves the port Oslo harbor at about 4:30 p.m. and 17 hours later arrives in Denmark, in Copenhagen. The ferry itself is pretty good. You have cabins where to sleep. You have different types of restaurants. You have arcades. You have piano bars. You can go dancing, listening to music. There's karaoke. There's even a sauna. So there's everything you want to spend a different night. Okay. As I was saying, 17 hours later, you get to the center of Copenhagen. And once you get off the ferry in Copenhagen, well, what you'll first notice, it'll be this. Hold on. Okay, I've got the slide of Copenhagen first. Copenhagen, capital of Denmark, 800,000 inhabitants. When you get there, as I was saying before, the first thing that might shock you a tiny little bit is thousands of cyclists everywhere. This is rush hour, okay? All walks of life can be seen pedaling against the wind during the morning or evening rush hours, with lanes wide enough for 2 or sometimes even 3 bikes. Riders are for the most part cordial and careful. I said the most part. Some of them are quite aggressive, but never underestimate the bikes. Have always the priority everywhere in the city. And as a pedestrian, it's useful to pay some extra attention when crossing the road or walking by mistake on a bike lane. You will be told off by the crazy cyclists. It's not unusual to see lawyers, doctors, business professionals in suits or dresses standing on their bikes at red lights, next to butchers, bakers, clerks, and people of every walk of life. So everybody uses the bikes. To make commuting by bike even easier, faster, and more comfortable, Copenhagen has built 17 new bridges dedicated for bicycles over the city canals and harbors since 2006. 15 of them just in the last 4 years, if I remember correctly. And also a series of more than a dozen of cycle superhighways have been set up to create higher speed traffic light-free paths from the suburbs that stretch up to 15 miles, because people from the suburbs come into town to work by bike. Well, if you're not too far, you can do it. Otherwise, the trains are all very well equipped to transport your bike and then keep biking, cycling in the city to reach your office or your workplace. There are more than 250 miles of bike lanes in Copenhagen. I'm talking about the city, okay? According to the Danish Foreign Ministry. and almost 600 miles of bike paths in the greater Copenhagen area, which makes, I mean, quite a lot of space for the bikes. Cycling has been part of the good life of, in Copenhagen for decades. It started its modern comeback in 1973, because that was when the global oil price shocks hit Maastricht in the once grimy industrial city is not a grimy industrial city anymore. Despite windy and rainy conditions for much of the year, biking in Copenhagen became increasingly popular between the 80s and the 90s, and more nowadays. Thanks to build it and they will come mentality, it was called. If you're thinking to rent a bike to visit the city as a local, be aware that you need to be quite experienced and know the rules, okay? You can't improvise as a cyclist in Denmark. They know the rules. But let me show you something. Well, we have some more numbers that I put on the slide. Why are bikes so used and spread in everyday use in Denmark? Because they are environmentally friendly, they're cheap, they're healthy, people keeps fit, and the land, the city is quite flat, so it's easy to cycle around. Okay, this is another rush hour that I took a picture that I took a few years ago. But the funny thing is not just the amount of bikes you see, but also the various models you see. For example, look at this for rainy days. Well, it's a good solution if you want to protect yourself from the rain. Otherwise, you have the Christiania bike, which was invented in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and it's for small families, if you have 2 or 3 kids, for example. But you also have the big cargo one, if you have a big family, or even if you have to carry stuff. I've seen, people moving from one house to the other, moving pieces of furniture with these bikes, which is a quite funny image, and shame I didn't take a picture of it. But yeah, bikes are, I mean, I know you had something, one of the previous presentations was about Amsterdam. I think that the phenomenon here is even bigger than the one in the Netherlands. All this bike phenomenon has given birth to a new term that I'm trying now to pronounce, is the Copenhagenization, the act of exporting the Copenhagen bikes lifestyle and urban infrastructure to another city. It's what the European cities are trying to do more and more. Just because you know that our main problem in the cities is the traffic. So a lot of capitals cities and capitals have started encouraging the people traveling by bike, using the bike, building cycle lanes and making their cities a bit more bike friendly. I witnessed this thing like more than 10 years ago when I used to live in London, and London wanted to become the new Copenhagen. Well, they still have a long way to go to become like Copenhagen, but it's a good sign for, well, to avoid all those traffic jams and all that pollution that we have in our cities in Europe. Okay, but I guess that you want to see something a bit more typical that you probably expected to see when talking about Copenhagen. Okay, no, sorry, before that, There are different means of transport. It's not just bike. You can walk around everywhere in Copenhagen because everything is quite close and quite accessible to everyone. Otherwise, you can use public transport. Here you can see a bus decorated with an advertising for the zoo, the Copenhagen Zoo, or you can use the tram. Or another solution is the metro. The metro network is quite widespread, is getting bigger and bigger. And there are also trains. I first experienced the first train without a driver from the airport to the city center. I think more than 15 years ago, which was weird. I didn't know at the beginning, so I was okay. Then I found out, but it was too late. And it's quite weird to be on a train directed, commanded by the central station without a human being driving it. But that's all right. It works really well. I won't complain. And because Copenhagen is on the water, you can move around. It's just like in Venice. You can use boats to move from one place to the other, paying a small fee, a small tickets. But let's go to something a bit more typical, as I said before, which is something that the reason why visitors from all over the world eagerly flock to see Copenhagen's most famous residence, the Little Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid, we call it. She's perched on a rock, and the sculpture is much smaller than you might expect. So it might be a letdown at the beginning. And some say that it's an overrated sculpture, statue. However, the walk up the harbor is worthwhile. And as there are other sites to take in on your way to visit the iconic mermaid. It was unveiled on the 23rd of August in 1913. And it was a gift from the Danish brewer Carl Jacobsen, I'm sorry, I keep making everything English, to the city of Copenhagen. She's just 0.1 feet tall, and she weighs 385 libras. The sculpture is made of bronze and granite. You see, the stone underneath is granite, and it was inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale about a mermaid who gives up everything to be united with a charming, handsome, young prince, which lived on land. And every morning and every evening, she swims to the surface from the bottom of the sea. And she goes on a rock in the water, and she stares longingly towards the shore, hoping to catch a glimpse of her beloved prince. Carl Jacobsen, the brewer that donated to the city this statue, fell in love with the character after watching a ballet performance based on the fairy tale by Andersen at the Royal Danish Theatre in Copenhagen. So the brewer was so captivated by both the fairy tale and the ballet that he commissioned the sculptor Edvard Eriksson to create a sculpture of the mermaid. But the sculpture was inspired by the leading ballerina of the ballet, which was Ellen Price. And in being 1909, she refused to be portrayed as a mermaid, naked mermaid, sorry. So the sculptor's wife posed, Eline Eriksson, and she posed for the sculpture of the Little Mermaid. So this is what we see today, okay? It's a symbol, it's still popular, sometimes too popular because it's overcrowded. And just in case you go there on your own because you want to take a picture, it's like an iconic picture that everybody wants to take. Be really aware of pickpockets. It's pickpockets paradise, this area. And while the rest of the city is really safe and really easygoing, this area here is like, joy for the pickpockets, because everybody is really distracted, taking pictures, posing close to the mermaid, and it's easy to pick the wallets and run away. Okay. So you might also not know something interesting, which is the Little Merman. Okay, the Little Merman is a Little Mermaid in a male version. Is not in Copenhagen. It's not is less popular and is more modern, as you can see. This is just like a close-up I took. And it's an hour drive from Copenhagen, but I'll give you a tip to just find a way to get out of the city for one day. This Little Merman is in Elsinore. Have you ever heard this name, Elsinore or Elsingor? I bet that if you're a Shakespeare fan, you should know it, because Hamlet was exactly set in Elsinore, exactly in this castle here, Kronborg Castle, which is the castle of Elsinore. And it's a lovely half-day excursion if you want to see something different during your visit to Copenhagen. And if you go along the coastal route to Elsinore, you will see splendid, magnificent sceneries of the sea and of the beautiful land that Denmark is. Okay. So, talking about castle, from castle to castle, let's move back to the city center, to Copenhagen. I want to take you to Amalienborg. What is it? Look. Amalienborg is of Queen Margrethe II and the Danish royal family. Let me show you a bit more. It's made of 4 palaces. 2 of them are open to the public, so you can visit them with guides. And you can get to know 250 years of royal history, visiting the museum, seeing actual rooms where the old monarchs lived. The best time to visit Amalienborg is at noon to witness the changing of the guards that you see in the photograph on the right bottom. Every day, members of the Royal Life Guard march through the city from their barracks to the palace to take over the watch. And the soldiers march around the courtyard in their midnight blue uniforms and distinctive bearskin hats. That reminds us a bit the ones worn by the British guards in London. When the Queen is in residence, they are accompanied by a marching band. Let me show you, who are these royals? Okay, we have here in this picture Queen Margrethe II and her prince consort Henrik. And behind them, the 2 sons with their respective wives. The one who will become king after Queen Margrethe's death is His Majesty Frederick. Okay. And Queen Margrethe II was born in 1940, and then she has been Denmark's reigning monarch since 1972. She's the first female monarch since the 12th century, when in Denmark ruled Margrethe I. Her son, Crown Prince Frederick, was born in 1968, and as I was saying, he will be the next one in line. Part of the line that reaches of the monarchy reaches way back to 2 important kings, Gorm the Old, believed to be born around the year 900, and Harald Bluetooth, born around 940. Prince Frederick's son Christian will continue the line into the future. So you see that it follows the male line. You might have noticed that all the future kings of Denmark, or the old ones, are named Frederick or Christian. And this is a tradition. Since 1513, the kings, the monarchs, have been named Christian or Frederick, and the two names alternate. With a father named Christian, you'll surely have the oldest son, Frederick, and vice versa. Today's Danish monarchy doesn't spend a lot of time on pomp and circumstance. Again, like the family in Oslo, royal family in Oslo, in Norway, the children of the royal family attend ordinary public schools. It is quite common to see the mothers cycling one of those Christiana bikes, taking their sons to public schools, or they simply ride their bikes, or they do what a normal common Dane would do. Okay. But the royal family plays an important role, public role. It's a symbolic role, both at home and abroad, because in Denmark, they promote good causes and welcome foreign heads of state at the glittering state dinners and banquets. They visit Greenland and the Faroe Islands because are part of the kingdom. They are Danish. And outside of the country, they had delegations that promote Danish products and Danish businesses. So they're quite busy, but quite down to earth. And what I wanted to go back to talking about is that, well, before I'll explain to you the role of a monarch in Denmark. The Danish monarch nowadays has a limited role in the government of Denmark under the Danish constitution. After national election, a coalition of monarchs presents the government for the monarch approval, upon which time because I'm talking about the queen at the moment, parties present the monarchs, the government to the monarch's approval, and she officially appoints the new regime. The monarch also formally approved each new law passed by the Danish parliament, the Folketing, called the Folketing, and including the ceremonial approval of each new Danish citizen. But what I wanted to talk about, and I can't wait to talk about this, is I mentioned before the name of a former king, Harald Bluetooth. And it made it interesting to know more about this monarch. He lived between 910 and 987, otherwise known as King Harald I of Denmark. And he was best known for three major achievements. And listen to this, because they're quite important. So first, he completed the work of unifying Denmark under a single ruler. Second, he conquered Norway, an event which had major historical consequences. And finally, he converted Danes and Norwegians to Christianity. So the dynasty he founded went on to rule over an increasingly large kingdom that, at its height, included much of the British Isles and parts of Sweden, which is quite big, I'd say. So, but let's focus one sec on his name. Does his name remind you of anything? Yeah, Bluetooth, the Bluetooth. This, the magic tool we have, or we all have on our devices to make them communicate. You know, you activate the Bluetooth and you can communicate with the different devices around you. Well, what's the connection? Bluetooth logo bears the initials of that Danish king, Harald Bluetooth, as I was saying, the one who unified different tribes, allowing them to communicate and obey to a single ruler, to a single monarch. Exactly how the technological device does with our computers, laptops, tablets, smartphones. So yeah, this is the reason why the Bluetooth device we have was named after this king. Interesting, isn't it? Moreover, what's funny is this kind of name, Bluetooth. Why? There are, well, the reasons of these nicknames, the nickname are like up for debate. Some say that it's because he loved eating blueberries, and while others say it's because he had a dead or a Bluetooth right in front of his front teeth. So we never understand, we'll never find out. But what I find really interesting is the connection between his name and a very modern contemporary device we use today. Okay, so let's move on now to other symbols of Copenhagen. This one, for example, one of these pictures was the cover of the presentation for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is New Haven. It was built by Christian V in between 1617 and 1673. Dug by Swedish prisoner, it was the new port that linked the sea to the center of the city, more precisely to Kongens Nytorv, which we'll see later, which is the main square right behind the Haven. Ny Haven, new, Haven, harbor. Okay, these are the Danish words for this. It was a busy area with ships, sailors, all sorts of products and goods, especially beers and prostitutes. Then it was abandoned because with the advent of larger boats, the port lost its importance. And it was just in the late 70s that it became what it is today. A pedestrian area with vibrant colors, as you can see, they're beautiful. It looks like, I don't know, something not real. And there are still historic tall ships that make Copenhagen's is one of the most famous and popular destinations in Copenhagen. You have to stroll down the less famous side for the best views and photographs, I'd say. And as well as look to stop and look at the house number 20, where the famous writer that I've already mentioned, Hans Christian Andersen, lived in 1835, when he published his first volume of fairy tales. To avoid the sky-high prices of the restaurants along this beautiful area, do as a local do. You can pick up a snacks and some drinks and beers or sandwiches from some takeaway. There are plenty everywhere in the area, and enjoy a picnic on the water's edge. That's what the Danes do, the inhabitants of Copenhagen. And don't let the crowds discourage you from going to see this picturesque harbor in high season. I know it will be crowded, it will be packed with people, but it is worth a visit. Maybe go late during the day to see it with a different kind of light, but don't miss it, okay? So I told you that earlier on, I said that New Haven was built to connect the sea to the city. The city, more precisely, Kongens Nytorv, which is the main square between Ny Haven and Stroget, which we'll see later. And again, it was built by Christian V. This is just a part. Kongens Nytorv is a huge square, and I've never been able to take a complete picture of it. I'm sure that if you Google it, you'll find quite a lot. You can see the equestrian statue right in the middle, the equestrian statue of Christian V, inspired by the statue of Louis XIII in Place des Vosges in Paris. I don't know if you've ever visited Paris. and also some historical buildings, the National Theatre, this one, and the Academy of Fine Arts, the Embassy of France. The architecture of the square is a mix of Roman, Baroque, and Art Nouveau. The square is used to open for open-air exhibitions. In wintertime, is used as an ice rink. And in the summer, in June, it's used for celebrations by the students who graduate in June, obviously. But okay, I showed you all the grandeur, the palaces, the history and everything. But guess what? I have one tiny little thing that I really like, my favorite thing in Kongens Nytorv, that I want to share with you. And it's the kiosk. It's a former box, a former phone box, sorry. Although Copenhagen has had a telephone company since 1882, at very first, people couldn't afford to have their private phone at home or their private phones. So it was necessary to create places where people could send and receive their messages. So between 1896 and the 1930s, around 30 phone boxes like this one were installed, each with a phone and an operator and a messenger by bike, of course, because as soon as they got the message, they would the messenger would have cycled to your house to report the message. And I think it's such a romantic image. The inspiration for the boxes came again from Paris. They were influenced by the then fashionable Art Nouveau. If you go to Paris, you'll notice a lot of Art Nouveau style scattered around the city, which was very popular in between the two centuries, the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Boxes also doubled up as advertising columns and with posters posted on the outside. Nowadays, they've lost their main purpose, of course, and they've been turned into coffee shops. They're open all year round. This one is the central one in Kongens Nytorv, but you'll find many others around the city. And you can sit outside to enjoy sunny days in the summer. And in winter, in which case you are provided by the owner with a very warm blanket, you can sip your drink, your coffee, your cocktail, and enjoy a crispy winter day. Okay, we keep walking from Kongens Nytorv, and we go to Stroget. What is Stroget? Stroget is the pedestrian shopping street, which is the hub of Copenhagen's lively center. It's dotted with historical buildings, squares, and fountains. Stroget is the longest pedestrian street in the world, believe it or not. And it's a shopping paradise, particularly for Danish design. Have you ever heard about Danish? Well, Scandinavian design, but Danish design is very popular, very famous. Welcoming up to 10,000 people per day in high season. Stroget is one of the most visited streets or avenues of Copenhagen. Well, after a while, when I'm there, I get a bit claustrophobic. I don't like to be surrounded by too many people with so much shopping around me. And one of the tips I give to my travelers when they travel with me, don't stop at the main street, at the main avenue. Explore the side streets. In the side streets, you often the gems, the real gems of the city are often hidden and are the heart of any European city. Look at these little streets. They're deserted, they're not full, and they're like a few steps away from Stroget. Okay, So those who stray, from the bustling shopping street are rewarded with charming, quieter squares. And this is one of them, Grobrodretorv, which is one of the most picturesque squares. It was once the site of a market hall and later a spot for local college students. Today it's a quiet oasis, home to restaurants, to cafes, and many with charming patios where you can decompress a bit the crowds you've lived before in New Haven, Kongens Nytorv, and the Strogets. So it takes its name from the friary that stood here in the 13th century, and it was destroyed by fire in 1728. Then it was bombarded in because when it doesn't rain, it pours. It was bombed in 1807 by the British and twice rebuilt. Grabrodretorv was for a time called Ulfeldtsplatz, after the Count Kurt Fitz Ulfeld, who built a mansion here in the 17th century. But, there's a but, the treasonous Ulfeld would become the most notorious traitor in Denmark, in Danish history in general. So his mansion was demolished and replaced with a pillar of shame that passing citizens could spit on. Okay, doesn't make you laugh. And the square returned to its original name. The pillar denouncing Ulfeld treason can be now seen at the Danish National Museum. Okay. Let's keep walking and we'll end up in another huge square, which is the Rådhusplatsen. Rådhus means city hall. At the end of Stroget sits Rådhusplatsen, home of Copenhagen's Italian-inspired city hall, where visitors can admire the ornate lobby and marvel of the Jens Olsen's word clock, an incredibly intricate piece of timekeeping. Exploring the square, you can discover the Gothic style, let me show you, dragon fountain, and the popular statue of Hans Christian Andersen. Once again, I know I mentioned him 1,000 times, but it's a very important figure in Danish history. And then there is also the stone pillar marking the former site of Vesterport, the western gate of the wall, which used to surround the city. Another interesting and quite unexpected spot to visit in Copenhagen is the Rundetårn, the 17th century tower and observatory. Is the oldest functioning observatory in Europe and an icon in Copenhagen cityscape. When Christian IV, another very important king of Danish history, built this tower, Denmark was quite famous for its astronomical achievements, thanks to the astronomer Tycho Brahe. And when he died in 1601, the king wished to continue Brahe's research, and thus the Round Tower came into being. It has been a while since scientists left this tower, but is still used by amateur astronomers and the many visitors. The observatory is encircled by an outdoor platform from which you have a magnificent view, can you see it on top, of the old part of Copenhagen, and it is worth a visit, and believe me, it's not that hard to get to the top. Now I will explain you why. To get there, you need to walk up a spiral walk. Can you see the photo on the right-hand side? Can you see that ramp? you don't have steps to go to the top of the tower, but you have that spiral walk, which is 268 meters meters long, sorry, at the outer wall, and only 85.5 meters long, close to the core of the building. Which means that you walk around 209 meters to get to the top, even though the tower is only 36 meters tall. But believe me, it's not that tiring. You can go up by bike as well. I think they allow just a few bikes at a time, or on a wheelchair, or with pushing a buggy if you want, but you can do it. Everybody can do it. One interesting story of the past is that when Peter, the Tsar of the Russian Tsar Peter the Great, came to visit this European wonder, this wonder of Copenhagen, he didn't want to walk up to the top, so he decided to go up by carriage, and was pulled by 2 horses. So you can imagine how big this ramp is. So this is an interesting story about the past. Just to go back to our beloved writer Andersen, he used to go here to read and take inspiration from the library, which is inside his building. And as a new attraction, you can now see the tower score by standing on a glass floor, hovering 25 meters above the ground, which is quite impressive. I tried many times to take pictures, but there's always reflection and stuff, so I don't have a proper picture of it. But so yeah, you're on glass, you're suspended somehow, but the glass is more than 50 millimeters thick, and that it can carry 900 kilos per square meter. So I think that you can feel quite safe. Okay. And that's it for the Rundetårn. I would suggest to move a bit further out, 6 minutes away. I won't ask you to walk that long. This is the typical sentence that tour guide said. It's just 5 minutes away. But believe me, it's just a 6 minutes walk from here, and you're sitting down. So it's just, this is virtual. And I'll take you to the botanical garden. It's away from the hustle and bustle and of other parks. There are large parks in Copenhagen, but some of them are invaded by kids playing, or cyclists, or people doing exercise. No, this is not the case of the botanical garden, which was designed for peace, tranquility, and contemplation. Its rich and diverse flora and many shady trees create a pleasant atmosphere in which to relax and enjoy wonders of the plant kingdom. Like several other parks, it straddles the old city ramparts. The impressive glass and cast iron palm house was built when the botanical garden first opened in 1874. And thanks to the recent extensive renovations, the garden is now even more friendly and welcoming to the general public. It is divided into different areas, each with distinctive features and specific plant species, including a bramble garden, a rock garden with alpine plants, a rhododendron area, herbaceous border areas dedicated to Danish plants, and along the lake, a long, beautiful harbor. The picture here is not complete. It won't show you the whole area, but there's also this tiny lake, which is really pleasant. The garden has plenty of benches and lawns where visitors can just sit down and relax, have a picnic, and take in the beautiful surroundings. Winding wheelchair-friendly paths link the many different areas. So it's open and it's for everyone. A new feature has been added to the garden recently in the form of observatory hill. It's a hill, and now the highest point in the inner city, which offers wonderful views over Copenhagen, numerous towers and spires. In front of the observatory, there is an inviting lawn again, where you can just lay back and relax. Okay, you might find nursery or school children having a lesson, because as soon as the temperature goes up a bit and as soon as the sun comes out, they go to outside to have lessons. So from this structure, I would keep walking, and I would like to take you to my favorite museum of Copenhagen, which is the Glyptotek. Carl Jacobsen, conviction that art could beautify, touch, and enrich the lives of everyone is still the rule at Glyptotek. The brewing magnate Jacobsen was an absolute believer in the didactic significance of art. I'm sorry, I'm starting to getting a bit tangled. Probably I need to drink a bit. In contrast to the character of traditional museums, he did not believe that either works of art or museum visitors should be overburdened with scientific and academic systems. Art should rather speak directly to the visitor itself, to the individual visitor. This was why Jacobsen also set great store by works which made considerable impact, most of all masterpieces with a certain momentality. Let me show you something. And at the same time, the Glyptotek was also to be an oasis. The museum's richly varied architecture, with the winter garden as a fertile point of rotation, should give every visitor a chance to disengage from the day to day, and making the visit a pleasure, or without any sense of obligation. I mean, you go to the museum, you can enjoy the works of art, but you can also relax and take it all in. The picture on the left-hand side is the famous thinker of Rodin. There is one of the thinkers he realized more than one, and one of them is here at the Glyptotek. Okay, remember that the Glyptotek is free of charge every Tuesday, so you can visit it for free. You can just peep in to have a look, and then without the obligation of having paid a ticket and then feeling obliged to interested. But believe me, it is worth it. Okay. You must be tired now. Okay, after all these buildings, historical stuff, and everything. So why don't we go to a more an easier place, the Tivoli Gardens. The Tivoli Gardens might be a good option to have fun as the locals do. My suggestion is to go here in the evening and stay until closing time, which in the summer is around midnight. And by that time of the day, everything becomes magical and glittery, all illuminated with little lights everywhere. And you might also see fireworks that, during the summer, if I remember correctly, happen every night. Such is this theme park's fame that some people come to Copenhagen just to visit the Tivoli Gardens. And even if you're not in the mood to get on a roller coaster or a carousel, it's an unforgettable place for an amble, thanks to its romantic 19th century representation of the Orient. After Bakken, this also in Copenhagen, Tivoli Gardens is the world's world's oldest theme park. But keep in mind that the majority of the attractions are made of wood. So it's quite old. And if you do have kids, well, you have to take them because they have the time of their lives here. And and then they will for sure enjoy some of these rides. With worth a special mention, the photo on the left-hand side at the bottom. It's the Star Flyer and a carousel that hikes riders up to 80 meters above the ground. Quite scary. But in fact, if you are in the area, you can hear people screaming and shouting from the Tivoli Gardens. But it's fun. And even if you don't go, if you don't use the attractions, just walking around, it's not free of charge. You have to pay to enter. And some of the attractions have a separate ticket. So it might end up being a quite expensive experience, but it is worth it again. Okay, so are you hungry now? I bet so. After all this, I will take you to the Torvelarne food market, which is a wonderland of food, where everyone from home cooks to professional chefs go to source fresh local produce. Within the complex of 2 glass halls and many outdoor stands, you can shop for quality ingredients for a dinner at home, or pick up goodies like wines, teas, chocolates, or just sit down and enjoy one of the many cafes, for example. And if you're keen to sample some of the local cuisine, why don't you give it a go to this magnificent smørrebrød, which is an open-faced sandwich of rye bread garnished with different ingredients. It can be fish, it can be eggs, it can be cured meat, it can be vegetarian. So there's everything for everyone for sure. Otherwise, guess what? You have to try the frikadeller. There can be meat or fish frikadeller. Again, the meatballs we keep talking about since the beginning. The fish frikadelle is fiskefrikadelle. It's called fiskefrikadelle, and it's delicious, even if you don't like fish. Another specialty you might want to try is the stegt flæsk, which is often considered the national dish of Denmark. It is basically crispy pork. Danish pork is quite popular and famous in Europe, with parsley sauce and potatoes. It's a simple but yet delicious dish that many Danes love. In fact, in 2014, the Danes had the chance to vote for a national dish, and more than 60,000 people voted for this dish. So yeah, why don't you give it a go? But if you're in the mood for something sweet, well, there's the ableskive. The ableskive is like a spherical pancake. It's difficult to describe. It's solid but still fluffy and light. If we should translate it to a taste, I would say that the taste of an ableskive is a mix of a pancake and a donut. I don't know if it makes sense. As said, that these pancake balls are extremely popular in Denmark during Christmas, but you can find them as well in supermarkets all year round. But just to warn you, of course, the homemade ones or the bakery-made ones are much better than the supermarket ones. Ça va sans dire, as they say. To finish our tour of Copenhagen, I wanted to talk about a couple of Danish inventions, which are the Christiana bikes. We mentioned them before. Do you remember the big cargo bikes where you can carry a lot of stuff? Those are properly Danish inventions. And Lego, the Lego bricks. The Lego bricks here, you see New Aven, the place where that we visited before, all made of Lego bricks. And I took this picture in Billund, which is in Denmark, and it's where the Lego bricks were invented. And then, just to finish, Denmark, the best and the most popular invention, especially nowadays when we need to live something different in this strange, difficult pandemic situation. It's the hygge. Hygge is a concept, is a state of mind invented by the Danish. It's simply a calm, comfortable time with people, a complete absence of frustrations or anything emotionally overwhelming, often enjoyed with good food and drinks, warm blankets and candlelight. This is the way the Danish perceive, live and feel the way of a good life, the way to a good life. Simplicity and your dear ones around you, good food and the coziness of your home. Okay? Now, it's time to leave Denmark to reach Stockholm, and we have two choices. I'll let you choose, or probably not, but we can catch the train, the fast train that in 5 hours and a half will take us to from Copenhagen to Stockholm, or we can drive. Maybe we're on a bus all together. I don't know if we can fit 2,000 people on a bus, but I might have good contacts. And it's about 12 hours drive. Why would I suggest to drive? Because, well, both options, to be honest, allow us to go across the Horizon Bridge. What's the Horizon Bridge? As you can see, it says, the name says it. It's a bridge that in 1991, the government of Denmark and Sweden decided to build to connect the two countries across the Horizon Strait. The 16-kilometer long horizon link between Malmö, which is the city. Let me show you this picture here from the satellite. So on the right-hand side, we have Sweden. On the left-hand side, we have Denmark, okay? So we have Malmö as the city of entrance of Sweden, and we drive from Copenhagen. It was opened in the year 2000, and finally, after 7,000 years, after the rising sea levels accompanying the end of the Ice Age, the two countries, the two states could communicate, were united again, okay? It is made, this link is made of 3 long segments. On the Denmark side, the one on the left, we have an underwater tunnel, which is 2.2 miles, around 2 miles long. Then the tunnel emerges, as you can see, from the blue, in the blue, which is the sea, onto a roadway in a 2.5 miles artificial island. And then it continues as a bridge, as a cable-supported bridge to Malmö and Sweden. Okay, so and we are in Sweden. This is what you see from the bridge. The turbines are quite popular in the as you might imagine. They are really environmentally friendly, and windmills and turbines are very popular everywhere. Okay. So let's keep going and let's arrive to Stockholm, where 1 million people live, and the city stretches.
Patty, on your way to Stockholm, do me a favor, take your papers off of your computer, because when they hit the microphone, there's very loud friction noises.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Sorry about that. The city is often called the Venice of the North, and being an Italian, one that lives close to Venice, I must admit that is true. As I would say, as beautiful as Venice. Stockholm lies on a number of islands and peninsulas at the outflow of the lake Molar in the Baltic, which here forms a deep inlet. The charm of its setting lies in the intermingling of land, and water. The skerries fringing the coast, the crags rearing up from the sea, and the intricate pattern of waterways encompassing the city. World-class museums, theaters, galleries, gorgeous parklands await, and traveling around couldn't be easier. Stockholm is a very easy city to explore. We have an excellent underground railway system called the tunnelbana that takes you almost everywhere, anywhere in the city. And then we have an highly efficient and regular bus network that fills in any gaps between destinations. And alternatively, you can take the time to walk. That's what we're doing now. Because Stockholm is a terrific city to walk, to absorb on foot. Okay, so the city also has an efficient network of bicycle lanes, again, not as much as Copenhagen, but yeah, they're very popular. Locals proudly call the city Levandestad, which means living city, because it's a large part of the cosmopolitan population. We have the cosmopolitan population that still lives in the downtown areas. A short hop from the city, just to explore the UNESCO-listed palace called Drottningholm. Drottningholm Palace means the palace of the Queen, and other fun tourist attractions on day trips. The royal domain of Drottningholm stands on an island in Lake Mälar in a suburb of Stockholm with its palace. There's a perfect preserved theater built in 1766. We have also the Chinese pavilion that you can see now, and the gardens that are a joy to your eyes. It is the final example of the 18th century Northern European royal residence. Here's the interior of the Chinese pavilion, inspired by the Palace of Versailles. And again, France comes back influencing architects. So the main members of the royal family are the King Carl Gustav XVI and Queen Sylvia. You can see them portrayed in a family portrait here. Queen Sylvia, Victoria, the lady sitting on the right-hand side of the bench with that boy who doesn't look really happy to be portrayed, will be the next monarch of Sweden, because she's the eldest member of the family. Sweden is in present days a representative democracy in a parliamentary system based on popular sovereignty, and as defined in the current instrument of government, one of the 4 fundamental laws of the realm, which makes up their written constitution. And members of the royal family undertake a variety of official and unofficial and representational duties within Sweden and abroad. But let's go back to the city center. You must be tired. Here we are. This is Norway. And can you see I've marked the name of a city in red. Is called Sigtuna, which is the former capital of Sweden. The name Stockholm originally referred to Gamla stan only. But as the city expanded, I'll show you and tell you what Gamla stan is in a few minutes. The name now also refers several suburban areas and the metro region. The name Stockholm means log island. Why in Swedish? Because the previous capital of Sweden was located in Sigtuna, the city marked in red on the map. 1,000 years ago, Sigtuna had problems with armed gangs attacking the city. The situation became unbearable and unstoppable. So there was the need to move them to a new location to set the capital of Sweden. So according to the legend, the leaders of Sigtuna took a log of wood, they carved it, they cut out all the wood inside, they filled it with gold and let it float to the water. The log was floating on the water for several days and eventually hit land on the island where Gamla Stan today is located. Here's Gamla Stan. The island was named Stockholm or Log Island, meaning the place where the log had hit ground. This is where they decided to found a new capital of Sweden. The island of Stockholm had the advantage that it was an island first, so it was easy to defend from armed gangs that could be thought to want to attack the city. It also had the advantage from a trade point of view because it was more exposed. And it was situated just at the inlet of Lake Mälaren, as I said before, a big lake, very important to contemporary trade for the Baltic. And there's a sculpture symbolizing this log, this legendary log, at the Stockholm City Hall. Gamla Stan is a beautiful place to visit. It dates from the 1200s and it is crammed with must-see sights, attractions, cafes, authentic restaurants, boutique shops. And the area of Gamla Stan is a living, breathing museum. So for many, this is the first stop of their journey. Everybody who comes to Stockholm, for first thing, they go to see Gamla Stan. And certainly there's no better way to instantly absorb the city's culture. There are plenty of souvenir shops and gifts, but there's also plenty of history. And you get transported back to medieval times as you meander through bewildering labyrinth of tiny, winding streets. Mysterious vaults and ancient frescoes lurk behind big picturesque facades. You can see it. Let me show you a bit more. If visiting in winter, be sure you take in the marvelous Julmarknad, which is the Christmas market. An experience that makes you feel like in a fairy tale. Then we have Stockholm Cathedral. This is the interior, and we have Stortorget, which is the main square, the oldest square in town. The historical center on which the medieval urban conglomeration gradually came into being. So today, the square is frequented by tens of thousands of tourists and is occasionally the scene for demonstrations and performances. It is traditionally renowned for its actual Christmas market that I mentioned before. And Stortorget was the scene of the Stockholm bloodbath, okay, in November 1520. For 3 days, the Danish-Swedish King Christian II beheaded and hanged 92 people. The most gruesome in Stockholm is the Stockholm bloodbath, a momentous event in Swedish medieval history that took place after the Danish Christian II invaded Sweden in 1520. Those days, people say that they could see the blood flowing across the square cobblestones around November the 7th and the 9th, when this bloodbath happened. Should one of those 92, can you see that red building, that red house with 92 white stones? Should one of those 292 stones in the red building where the nobles were murdered, because the nobles, why did I say nobles? I don't know. The nobles were murdered. should one of these white stones be removed, the ghost of the person represented by that tile will rise from the dead and haunt the streets of Stockholm for all eternity. This is a legend, of course. Stockholm is full of legends, and it was interesting. I thought it was interesting. Finally, we're going to go to meet the Nobel Museum, the bigger Nobel Museum. Do you remember in Oslo we talk about the Nobel where they award for the Peace Prize? This is the museum which aims to spread knowledge and create interest and discussion around the natural science and culture through creative learning, exhibition techniques, interactive activities, and modern technology. The Nobel Prize Museum illustrates a century of creativity where visitors can follow the changes of the 20th century through the Nobel Prize and the Nobel laureates. You can explore, you can use the interactive tools inside the museum, and you can watch films, short films, and you can see original artifacts on computers. But who was Alfred Nobel? He was a Swedish inventor. He was an entrepreneur. He was a scientist, a businessman. He also wrote poetry and drama. He varied interest and reflected in the prize he established, and which he lay in the foundation for in 1895, when he wrote his last will, leaving much of his wealth to the establishment of the prize. Since 1901, the Nobel Prize has been honoring men and women who are around the world for their outstanding achievements in physics, in chemistry, psychology, medicine, literature, and peace in Oslo. Again, I have to repeat it. He specified that the bulk of his fortune should be divided into 5 parts to be used for every single prize, every single award. Guess what? How much he left? He left 31 million Swedish kronas, which means $265 million today, to fund the prizes. So we will see later where the awards and the ceremony and the banquet are held every year in December. So I opened the introduction of Stockholm talking about the royals and their summer residences, always in Gamla Stan, just a few steps away from the Nobel Museum and from Stortorget, there's the Royal Palace. So this is the official palace for the monarchs of Sweden. While the one we saw in Drottningholm, the palace of the Queen, is their summer residence. Okay, it's a rich taste of the once mighty Swedish Empire, and the palace is one of the largest in Europe, with more than 600 rooms and several museums. Dating from the 18th century and Baroque style, the palace houses many gems. Let me show you some. We have, for example, Queen Christina's silver throne. We have the armory. And one thing that you should do if you're there is going to the changing of the guards every day at 11:30, which is really picturesque. But I wanted to show you something less glamorous of Gamla Stan, but I like it very much. What is this? It's the backyard of the Finnish church. Well, not really appealing as a building, but what I wanted to show you is that what I've already unveiled, sorry, and is this Jernpojke, the boy looking at the moon. It's 5.9 inches high. It's the small smallest statue in the world. It was it was created in 1967, and it's here all alone, looking at the stars and at the moon, day and night, winter and summer. The tradition says that it is a tradition to leave some present, some gift, some offer, okay? Sometimes they leave money, sometimes they leave food. Sometimes in the winter, they knit a little woolen hat or a scarf to keep him warm. And I find it really romantic and cute. That's why I wanted to show it, to share it with you. Okay. It is said that is a popular lucky charm. In fact, it is said that if you touch his head, if you stroke his head, as you can see, is really polished. The person who will do it will come back to Stockholm. So remember, when coming to Stockholm, if you want to come back, to stroke his head. Okay. Now let's move over water. I'm just speeding up a bit because I know it's late and I've talked quite a lot, probably too much. I'm sorry about that. We get to Djurgården, which is a tranquil oasis in the earth of the city. The island of Djurgården draws tourists and locals alike, particularly because during summer months, because of this beautiful nature, and because there's the Royal Park here, and it's a perfect place where to stroll, to have a picnic, and there are a lot of museums. It's called the Museum Island, okay? In other words, there are pleasant cafes, restaurants, snack bars, and hotels. If you want, you can hire bicycles to explore the forest, and the trails is safe. It's a safe experience. You're not in the traffic, so that you can get used to cycling in a European capital. And what I wanted to show you is one of the gems of the islands, which is the Vasa Museum. Okay, you can get here also by tram, okay, not just by bike or by boat. And you will get to the Vasa Museum, which is one of the main gems, as I was saying, of the island. It's a museum about a battleship that was intended to be the pride of the Swedish imperial fleet. Yet, in a forerunner of the Titanic disaster centuries later, sank on its maiden voyage in 1628. An amazing salvage operation took place in 1961, and now you can marvel at this glorious time capsule, 95% of which is entirely original, okay? The three masts on the roof of the museum that I showed you, these ones, are not just a tourist draw, but they were reconstructed to the exact height and specifications of the original masts. This is the most visited museum in Sweden, and rightfully so, because it's beautiful. You can see on the right-hand side, the little model, the small model of the boat. More than 1 million people a year come here to enjoy the different exhibitions. There are a lot of interactive spaces where you can get to know more about the history of this national disaster. And the entry is free if you're under 18 years old. Instead, if you want to spend more time outside, you can go to Skansen, which is an open-air museum. It's the oldest open-air museum in the world. A wonderful attractions for families, particularly those with young children. You will be drawn back in time to old Sweden. And there are more than 150 old buildings that have been disassembled in the disassembled in the countryside and reassembled here to make this curious, interesting museum. It's a folk museum, I'd say. On display are distinct down districts, including manor houses, a bakery, a pottery, and also there is the reconstructions, the reconstruction, of the beautiful Seglora timber church. There is a zoo, of course, there is an aquarium, there's anything you want for your children and for your family. I would move forward to take you to a complete different setting just across the road. And this is the ABBA, actually it's called ABBA the Museum. Yeah, you got it right, ABBA, the Swedish super troopers who stormed the pop world between 1972 and 1983. They split up 30 years ago, but the movie Mamma Mia, featuring their music, is still the most successful movie musical ever. And almost 50 million people have seen the same name musical production. So at this museum, the legend lives on. And as the claim of the advertising says, is that you enter this museum walking and you exit dancing. It's a permanent exhibition in the Swedish Music Hall of Fame. And the museum showcases the band, just to give you a better idea of who the ABBA are. Let me show you. There you go. They were dressed up like this. And you can, when you buy a ticket, you get an ID that generates a page of on the museum website. And once inside the museum, you can sing and dance with holograms of ABBA. You can don a digital costume projected on you. You can take pictures of yourself with the holograms, and then you get to share the photos and the videos on Facebook or any other social media. And after 30 days, the recordings are deleted from the site. Fortunately, probably. Okay, so it is for everyone. Believe me, I'm not a fan of ABBA, but I had much fun. And I had fun seeing my travelers enjoying it so much, even young people who've never heard of ABBA before. All right, now the tone changes because we're going towards the end of our walking tour of Stockholm, and I'll take you to the town hall, as I will walk you through another wonderful building of the city. You will see a lot of amazing works of art inside and outside. Stockholm, with its spire that you can see on the top, but I'll show you better here, with the typical 3 crowns, golden 3 crowns, which are symbol of Stockholm. It was designed by the architect Ragnar Osterberg and built from 8 million bricks, okay? Behind these magnificent facades are offices and session halls for politicians and officials, as well as splendid assembly rooms and unique works of art, as I said before. Well, this is still outside, but even the inside won't let you down. Stockholm's Municipal Council meets in Rödsalen, that means the Red Room, the council chamber. This is always outside, and now we're going inside. The great Nobel banquet is held at City Hall. On the left, there is a fantastic ceiling of one of the rooms. And on the right-hand side, there's the Blue Hall, where the Nobel banquet is held every year in December. And after having awarded the laureates, this is a better view probably. This is called Blue Room because all the windows on top weren't supposed to be there, but the architect wanted to give more color to the building inside, and he decided to create that space for the windows to let more light inside. And if you go from the inside to the outside, you will see the blue of the sky. That's why it's called the Blue Room. So after the banquet, I was saying, everything ends up here in the Golden Hall, where there is the great ball with monarchs and laureates and important people taking part to the Nobel Prize. Okay, the very last thing, I can't just say goodbye to Stockholm without showing you the subway system, which is said to be the world's longest art exhibit, more than 110 kilometers long. You might not understand me. What, an art exhibit? Yeah. The Stockholm subway system is truly one of a kind. 100 stations, each with unique art on its platform, walls, or waiting hall, will surprise you. Let me show you something. These are some examples. Since 1957, a lot of artists have played a key role when new stations have been built. Look at this. These are all different metro stations. And I usually advise to keep this place to be visited on a rainy day, for example, when you don't know what to do, where to go, you don't want to spend much money. Here with $2 or $3, you buy a ticket for 75 minutes, right? And you are able to visit this art gallery. So I strongly advise you to visit it, to give it a go. Of course, if you come in the summer, you won't feel the need to go underground, but believe me, it's beautiful. Just to finish, we'll talk about a bit of food as usual. We have the usual meatballs, which are everywhere. Now you must have understood. I won't bore you more with this. Underneath, we have the lingonberry jam, which is these charming red berries, come with almost everything in Stockholm's menus. The popular fruit tastes and looks like a cranberry and sprouts throughout Scandinavia. Swedes usually prefer lingonberries in jam, and they combine it with food like meatballs, with steaks, with potatoes and porridge. Okay. While on the right-hand side on the top, you see crayfish, okay? When you go to Stockholm in the summer, you hear the song of cracking crustacean shells in the summer air, okay? It means that summer has arrived. And it's a way to bring family and friends together during these balmy summer months, which are usually 2.5. They wear festive paper hats and plastic bibs, and they enjoy typical of this city, of this country, I'd say. Last but not least, quite embarrassing to talk about it, we have the surströmming, which is salted fermented herring. Is not for everyone. This infamous canned fermented herring as one of the most putrid smells in the world, but the smell doesn't reflect the taste, okay? You need to know, don't think to buy it, to bring it home, because some airlines prohibit passengers from carrying surströmming onto aircrafts based on claims that the pressurized cans are subject to explosion. So you can imagine what this can cause to all the luggage. So if you're feeling adventurous, give it a go. And you will let me know what you think. Okay, I want to thank everyone with the last slide about fika, which is the coffee time with something sweet to be enjoyed with friends. And it's a typical tradition, a typical way of enjoying time together with your friends in Sweden. I wanted to thank everyone for being up with me so late. Well, it's late here, maybe not there, but it was a long presentation. And thank God I tried to summarize a bit because there's so much to say about it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mara, for your patience with my technology issues. Thank
Oh,
you.
Patty, thank you very much. I can't imagine we got through 3 capitals from Scandinavia. I think the theme is Scandinavia capitals more than a meatball, right? We've seen so much and so much detail, and there's so many people who appreciate the depth of your sharing. So I want to thank you for that. I do want to go into the Q&A at this point, and those of you that are with us, I mean, obviously, Patty has put her time, energy, and soul into this publication. So if you are so inclined to leave a tip, there is a slide up right now, and it tells you where to tip. If you're on Facebook and you don't know how to tip, you can certainly PM me, and I will provide you with those details. So Patty, if you don't mind at this point, I'm going to really jump right into the Q&A. If you could open the Q&A on your menu bar, and then you can read the questions starting at the top and provide some insights or answers that we haven't discussed, I would really appreciate it.
Well, I might not be. Is it the chat?
No, the Q&A. You should see a Q&A.
Canada is such reputation for being very expensive. Yeah, okay, Susan. Scandinavia has such a reputation for being a very expensive destination. How can I visit and not spend a fortune? Well, there are ways, Susan, not to spend too much money, to travel budget. Of course, it is expensive, but as I always suggest, go for a picnic when you have to eat something. Don't go to fancy restaurants. There are a lot of hostels, for example, where you can find accommodation, and they're much cheaper than hotels. Choose the free days, especially in Copenhagen. You have the Tuesdays are free, is a free day for museums, so you can visit the museum without paying a fortune, without breaking the bank. So there are solutions. And I would say that the most expensive country, as far as I've experienced, is Norway. So be extra careful in Norway. Okay. It says, Robin Prothero, I wonder why Finland isn't considered part of Scandinavia. I don't know if you were connected at the beginning of my super long presentation. Probably was too boring and you got a bit lost. Yes, Finland is considered Scandinavia under the cultural point of view. This presentation here I had, because you see 3 cities, 3 hours. If I had to include also the rest of what is considered Scandinavia, we would have stayed here all night, and I don't think we would have lasted, me or you. Where are the Sami people? Where is Lapland? Sami people are the nomadic population of the northern part of Scandinavia. They are in Norway and in Lapland, in the northern part of Sweden. Just one more thing I forgot to tell you before. Yes, come to Norway, go to north of Norway to see the northern lights. But remember that maybe the northern lights are even better in the north of Sweden. Okay. Then the houses, Erika Schrimmer, the houses by the water are beautiful. Does Norway have flooding issues after heavy rains? Have they had issues with tsunamis? No, not at all. It's not that kind of situation there. Is there, Mary Labanks, is there a major airport in the north to be able to see the northern lights? Yes, you can get to Narvik in Norway. And you can get, I guess, in Sweden to Kiruna, if I remember correctly. I should double check. How old is the Bergen Wooden Church? The Bergen Wooden Church is about 300 years, if I remember correctly. There are still more dispersed around the country. How do wooden churches not deteriorate in the weather? Well, that's a good question. Well, there was a lot of maintenance with only natural products. Don't imagine artificial chemical boxes or stuff. Is it possible to tour fjords in the winter? Yes, it is, but you need to be careful because some of the narrower fjords get frozen, so the boats cannot go in, or not always, just smaller boats, not boats for tourists. I've done it once with the postal ferry from Bergen to Kirkenes, which is at the very border with Russia. And I was with a boat that doesn't exist anymore, the Urtigruten. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. Since then, I started touring in Scandinavia. And then what is the temperature in the summer? Well, in the summer, Loretta Alexander, in the summer, the temperature is quite enjoyable. I've had summers there with 28 degrees, which in Fahrenheit is 56 plus 32 in your 95s. So it's good, and you can just lay by the water and enjoy the sunshine. And then I see many signs in English. Is it common to hear English spoken in Norway? Ruth Lincoln, definitely. They speak much better English than I do, of course. And so it's easy for everyone to communicate, especially in touristic areas, okay? And then how many days does an anonym, how many days in Oslo to get a good overview of the city? I would say 3 might be enough, okay? If you want to stay in the city center and just go out for a little bit to see what's outside, but not too far away. Are the same, Lisa Silverman, are same-sex marriages acceptable in all of these countries and in the Nobel Peace Center? Oh, well, I don't know if in the Nobel Peace Center you can get married, but same-sex marriage is allowed. The Scandinavian countries are the first countries in Europe to have allowed that. There are, for example, gender-free toilets, even in schools. So the perspective towards sexuality and gender is much broader and wider than what we have down south in the south of Europe. And then Kathy Brown, when was the Oslo Opera House built? I was in Oslo 51 years ago. Well, much later, I think about 20 years ago, if I remember. Yeah, it's much more recent. Yeah, I visited Oslo, another anonym, 6 years ago. All the tickets for museums were very expensive. Where can we enter for free? Thank you. Well, some of the places in Oslo, I think it was Oslo, have you already deleted it? Yeah, are free of charge. The town hall, the opera house, for example. The others, if you buy the Oslo card, then you have free admittance to all the other museums. So it looks like quite an investment at the beginning, but then the more museums you visit, and the more the money is optimized. Okay, and then the opera and the Vigelands Museum were for free. Yeah, it's the same one, I think. Yes, Vigelands is for free, and it's a joy, a joy. My colleagues and friends in Sweden have told me that it's considered an insult to offer many services because Swedes pride themselves in their independence, and it would imply that they need help. For example, airport transport doesn't help with my bags unless I ask. Is it the same in other Scandinavian countries? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they've got more or less the same approach. Where did they find these ships? I guess you're talking about, I hope you're talking about the Vasa, the burial ships. They were around the countryside in Norway in different places. Okay, they were underground. Usually farmers digging or plowing their fields. They found them. Okay, so it's amazing. Do they use euros? No, each country has a different currency. You have the Norwegian krona, the Danish krona, and the Swedish kronas. Are the animals in the Norway area that had horns, artists, or to liberty to make the Vikings more calm? Okay, yes, there were animals who had horns, the antlers of reindeers, for example. I don't know. Are the mailboat cruises are good? Yes, as I said before, Fran Levy, are the mailboat cruises good to see the fjords? Absolutely, is one of the best experiences you can do. I did it and it's great. Diane Bernard, what are the Norwegian sweaters made of? What type of wool from which animal? You find me unprepared. I know it's wool and I think sheep, but I cannot guarantee 100%. It's better maybe if you check on Google, or I can just send you a message tomorrow. Okay, what is the cost of the apartment in this building? I guess because this is right at the beginning when I was talking about Oslo and the barcode project. Well, it's quite high. It's quite a high price. I don't know how to convert it in dollars now, but you go to from 600,000-700,000 euros. No, 600,000. I'm sorry, 600, 700, 800,000 euros for a small flat. Okay, how much does the ferry to Copenhagen cost approximately? That's a good question. I think it's about $100, but the dinner is included, and it's a great experience. To be honest, I've never paid. Yeah, there are many hostels in Scandinavia, Jody Rudnick, and also camping sites. I went camping as well. They're really clean and neat. Are electric bikes used to? Carl Paulson. Yes, they are. They're becoming a bit more popular now, but I mean, they love cycling, real cycling, so they don't take it much into consideration. Do people bike to work during rains or snow? Yes, definitely. What is a wheelchair access like in Scandinavia? Scandinavia is a very civilized, modern area, country, let's say, and they really take care of children, mothers, impaired people who need to use wheelchairs. So absolutely, it's easy. It's always better to ask information before going there if you're going to a specific site or a specific museum. What is the best time to visit Scandinavia? Well, from May, I would say, to September. So you can also enjoy the long days with no nights practically. So yes, I would say so. If you're not afraid of the cold, go. It's an experience in the winter too. But remember, it's always dark, so that can affect a bit your pictures and even the way you see things. All right. What is the cost of living in Oslo or Copenhagen? They are the most expensive places in Europe, but it's expensive. The locals obviously have big wages. They pay big taxes. And they always affirm that they are happy to pay taxes because the welfare, the services, and everything that the state, the country provides is impeccable. Okay, it's perfect with no bureaucracy at all. Or I mean, it's a system that works. And I'm talking as an Italian, where we pay taxes and we don't have anything else in return. Okay. Didn't the Vikings bury the dead by putting them in a boat and setting it on fire, then pushing it off into the sea? Not always, not always. And you must, in some situations, they buried them, okay? It depends probably on the period they belong to, the period of time. Frederick looks younger than Joachim. Oh, I've never... How is that with the king instead of Joachim? I know that Joachim, yes, because Joachim, well, he got married, he got divorced, and is married to another lady. And I think he renounced to the royal, how do you say, favors. So his brother will become king, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Are there vegetarian food options in these countries? Well, so and so, fish. Yes, you find a lot of veggies, but okay, they don't taste like the ones you have in Southern Europe, of course. You survive. There's a lot of bread if you want, and you find the solutions. I led tours with vegetarian and vegan people there. Well, for vegans is a bit more difficult. For vegetarians, it's quite easy. How is renting a bike in Norway, Denmark, Sweden? Bike theft? Well, you can rent it everywhere. Bike theft is, well, the average as in any other city in Europe. I'm talking about Europe because I know more about it. How much time would you estimate it would take for the lengthy tour of 3 capitals that you just talked about? Well, I work for a company that makes me do it in 8-9 days. Okay, but it's go, 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 go. And moving at night from from Oslo to Copenhagen, for example, so that you don't spend too much time on the road during the day and you optimize the time. I would say, just to take things easy, that I would spend at least, just for the 3 capitals, 10 days. Do people ever swim in the lakes or oceans in any of the capitals? Yes, they do. Yeah. My grandfather was born in Stockholm after his family emigrated in the late 1890s from Belarus. Can you describe what life was like for an immigrant Jewish family during that time? This is a question that was better asked to your grandfather, but for this, of course, it wasn't easy, even because going, for example, to Norway before the 70s, it was just desperation because it was a very poor country. Norway, sorry, in the 60s, Norway discovered to be rich just in the late 60s when they found the petrol. So now they're rich for that. And the society is a completely different society from the rural society that they had before. In which Norwegian area can we find those fall rapids you showed at the beginning? It's going up from Oslo by train using a special tourist pack called Norway in a Nutshell, which takes you by train. It's just beautiful. To Bergen. It's quite a long way. If I remember correctly, it's like 7 hours on the train, but you go through all these beauties. And then there are many other falls all around in Norway. Okay. And does the 10 days for 3 capitals include transport between? Yes. Yeah. How did the Viking society survive where were the majority of their villages? Well, there are plenty of villages in the north of Denmark, and you can still visit them, and they're nice. You can really, and some of the houses, let's call them houses, were restored, and they're amazing, an amazing experience. Okay. Didn't the Vikings bury the dead by yes, I've already read that. I've already answered that. And what does a crown prince means versus just prince? Crown prince and prince. I think that the crown prince, but I'm not really, because I'm not really royal myself, so I'm sorry if I let you down. But I think that the royal prince has the right to accede to the throne, while a normal prince hasn't. But it's better to double check because I might have said something wrong. Sorry about that.
So Patty, I'm going to jump in here because I think that we are through the questions I just want to thank you so much for your thorough representation of the capitals of Scandinavia. I think, like me, I have never been, and now it's on my bucket list, and I'm sure it is for so many. It seems like it's one of those places that you do want to see in the winter, and you do want to see it in the warmer weather. So maybe you have to go twice.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Oh, we do have an answer to the Crown Prince. One of our viewers says that the Crown Prince is the firstborn and he's the heir to the throne. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, Patty. Thank you to the attendees and thank you to the audience. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing another adventure with us, and we will see you all next week. So thank you again, and thank you, Patty.